why would you punish this man who's trying to sell candy? Like, obviously he's not trying to hurt people.
Yeah, he's probably devastated just having that on his conscience.
Oh my gosh, 21 people died, most of which are children, and all these other people are sick. They probably never would buy candy from you again.
Yeah.
It's ruined both of their lives. Hi, I'm Trevor Craig, and I'm a scientist.
Hi, I'm Brittany Hansen, and I'm a pop culture enthusiast. And this is Okay, But Why, a Microbac Laboratories podcast about science and pop culture.
Hello, I'm Trevor, and I'm a scientist.
Hi, I'm Brittany, and I'm a pop culture enthusiast. And this is Okay, But Why, a Microbac Laboratories podcast about science and pop culture. How's it going?
Hello again.
Hello.
I know, it's been a day. How are you doing in the latter part of it?
It's been really good. I'm loving being in Miami. The weather's beautiful.
Lunch was really good. That's maybe the highlight of my day so far. I mean, the podcasting's great. Don't get me wrong. Lunch is great.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite things of the day.
Of course.
I wanted to tell you, and we talked about this earlier, but we forgot to bring it up earlier, that after our last story, there's been like a news update on that one.
Yes.
So we just recorded a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, I guess, probably when this comes out, is we talked about smog and the black fog and everything. And right after that one, Pakistan actually issued this huge warning where they canceled schools. They canceled certain parks you couldn't go to because they have a huge smog problem right now. And I just was reading some news stories, like 70,000 people could potentially be affected because of this.
Wow.
So we talked about a story that happened in like the 1800s and the 1920s, and we went through all these time periods. It's still happening today, and it's still really bad. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
One of my biggest questions during that podcast is that still happening? What have we done to prevent it? Are there any, preventative measures? It sounds like it's still happening. So really sad.
It's in the second largest city of Pakistan. We talked about this because I like the city name. It's Lahore. And it was like, I'll remember that for the rest of my trivia career.
Yeah.
Like, what is the second largest city in Pakistan? I'll know it. But it is due to pollution and the same thing that we talked about earlier. You can see it from space, apparently. That's how big it is. And the smog is getting so bad that now they're having problems in countries surrounding Pakistan. Like it's spreading out because of wind and how it's moving and stuff like that. So I read just briefly some headlines talking about India also facing a problem because of it. But it's insane. And we also have a tendency that when we talk about stories, something happens with them immediately afterwards.
Yeah, now I'm going to be nervous.
I know. I'm always afraid to talk about anything now because I'm like, I hopefully don't summon anything bad. But
yeah, our last topic was cancer.
I know that one. And we talked about radiation, where we talked about 3 Mile Island, and that got purchased and it's going to be reopening. And one of the things about that was right when we were ending that podcast, we specifically said like, oh no, it's deconstructing. They're never going to open it again. And like a month later, it's like, just kidding. They're going to be doing that real soon now.
Yikes. That would be crazy if we were secretly controlling the world and what was happening based on our topics.
If that was the case, I'd be doing much better for myself.
World peace.
Like I'd be making some better decisions. No, I'm not even being, selfishly, I would be doing better. Like world peace. Yeah, that's cool too. But also.
And then next month is millionaires.
Yes. I'm looking for a bigger apartment.
Man wins lottery.
Start small, work my way up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess if you guys aren't familiar or know what's going on, we're now recording a couple podcasts live. So these are a couple months ahead of time. So we're going to jump into our next episode, but you guys won't hear this for a couple months. So
yeah, I think we're planning around Christmas time.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not quite Christmas themed, but it's a little Christmas themed.
I'm ready to put my decorations up. But as you know, our house is under construction, so I don't get to decorate this year.
I am not an early Christmas decorator.
Really?
I will decorate like on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But I did... just because of stress shopping, and that's who I am as a person. I bought a new Christmas tree topper.
Ooh, what is it?
It's a iridescent colored star, and it's got lights on the inside of it, so it looks really like pearlescent and really cool looking. And it was on sale.
Slay.
And then I know, I'll slay for the Christmas season. Got it. And then I also bought a bunch of ornaments for my tree that are new because I have a unique tree. I do a water themed tree. So my tree is white and blue, and all my ornaments are like fish and whales and jellyfish and stuff like that, just because it's different. And I thought, it's kind of cool. I was like, this will be a unique tree. And there are so many ornaments that fit into it. So I went to the store and I got a little whale
Cute.
that's like a sequined, a shark that's sequined, and a narwhal, like a narwhal with a little unicorn, and it's got like a unicorn mane on it too.
You know, we're both from the Midwest, but when I moved to California, I was like, all of this like snowy Christmas decorations just don't feel real because there's no snow on the ground. So last year I wanted to do a very coastal, like coastal decoration. So I did a light blue, like coastal colors, and I wanted to do like starfish and oyster shells and things like that to decorate the tree to make it feel like, because we're right on the beach. And I saw actually a TikTok the other day where a girl used a styrofoam cup and she super glued oyster shells on the outside to make the like little things on the tree. And it was so cute and coastal. I was like, I want to do that.
I have some ornaments that are oyster shells because they've got like a pearly inside of them. They're really pretty, and they're just someone like dug a hole through them and put them on a string. I'm like, oh yeah, these are my little ornaments there.
So I'm getting ideas for I guess 2 years away.
You'll get there, but eventually. Are you going to do anything? Or your house can be done by Christmas?
Well, right now we don't even have floors or ceilings. It's down to the bare bones. So by Christmas time, I'm hoping that I can at least move back into the house because we have a cat, so she can't be there with the holes in the floors. But by the new year, we'll be back. Obviously, by that time, it won't make sense to decorate, but I'm excited just to like have my own space again for sure.
Listen, you can decorate and keep it up for as long as you want.
We make the rules in adulthood.
Yeah, no one's going to judge you. If we are having a call and I see a Christmas tree in July, I won't say a word. I will let it fly.
Wait, that's a trend. People do Christmas in July.
So my birthday falls over like Christmas and July weekends.
Fine.
I'm July 14th, so like very middle of the year kind of a thing. But yeah, a lot of times people are like, oh, it's a Christmas in July party. I'm like, no, it's my birthday.
It's my birthday party.
It's actually my birthday party. Don't get confused. So.
Love that. Okay, well, what do you have for us today?
Okay, today we are going to talk about Humbug Billy and the Bradford Sweets Poisonings.
Humbug makes me instantly think of the holidays. Ball humbug.
Okay, so you got my theme.
Okay, love it.
Okay. Humbug Billy was a candy producer. This is 1858 in Bradford, England. This is tainted candy, left hundreds sick, 20 dead, 20-ish dead. Some people say 21, including many children. But the kind of silver lining of this is how we deal with adulterated food right now, and how we do with heavy metals and poisons that somehow get in food as well.
Okay, word you just said there, adulterated food. What does that mean?
So adulterated food, and we're going to go into a lot of details towards the end because this is a very complex topic, is food that is changed from what it's originally supposed to be.
Okay.
The law now states that you can't sell food that says it's something that it's not something else. So if you say this is a protein shake and it has 20 grams of whey protein, it has to have 20 grams of whey protein. It can't have 20 grams of total protein and some of it's whey and some of it's something else.
Okay.
That is knowingly selling something as pure that's not. So pure cane sugar that's actually not sugar. We hear about adulteration a lot when it comes up recently with honey. Yeah. Honey is often adulterated with high fructose corn syrup. Spices have been adulterated. We talked about cinnamon being adulterated, where they're selling cinnamon, but there's also other things in it to make it more red or heavier because they sell by the pound. And that adulteration or something they're changing it is actually against the law.
Man. Okay, well, I'm thinking juice too, where it says like 100% juice.
Yes.
That's scary. I don't know if the laws are the same in the U.S. as other places, but I feel like I would like to know if I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to buy something and it says it's 100% juice and it's not. Like,
it's a huge issue.
Don't want that to happen.
Apple juice is a very commonly adulterated product.
Oh, I love apple juice.
I know, it's great. But a lot of apple juice is actually pear juice.
Oh.
A lot of apple juice is high fructose corn syrup.
Okay, don't want that.
But in the U.S., it is against the law to sell something that you are advertising that it is not. So if you're saying it's 100% pure, no.
Okay.
It's still illegal and it happens all the time. Okay. But it's really hard to trace in some cases. Like honey is a good example. It's coming from other places. It's really hard to find out, is this 100% honey or is this honey that is cut with something else?
Yeah.
What is not illegal is to cut things and put it on labels. So if you say this is honey and it's 40% honey and 60% high fructose corn syrup, that's not illegal as long as it's on the label. That's part of the ingredients.
Oh my gosh. You know, there's that app that you can take pictures of products and it says like if it's good or bad for you. I feel like maybe there is one, but it would be nice that if there was one that you could take a picture of a label of the food and it could say like, you know, is this real or whatever is the ingredients, if they're good or not.
TM. We are trademarking this and we're going to make our own app. No one take our idea. But I've often talked about like apps too, like look at labels and tell you, to scan in the label and tell you if it's involved in a recall.
Yeah.
But also give you historical knowledge, like how many times has this company had a problem with adulteration?
Whoa, that's a good idea.
But it's really hard because it happens so often.
I wonder if there's one, because I have a lot of like friends, family that are either celiac or gluten-free, and like a lot of ingredients, like even spices, sometimes have gluten in there. Yeah. I feel like that would make life a little bit easier when grocery shopping. Yeah,
well, and then not only while you're grocery shopping, but then like I get text messages from my grocery store. So I'm in Pennsylvania. I have a lot of Giant Eagles. And if something's recalled from Giant Eagle, I use their credit, whatever. It's not a credit card, but it gives you points. Yeah. Whatever that thing is called.
Loyalty.
Yeah. And if I use that, and because of that, it tracks everything. So if something's recalled, I'll get a message on my phone that says,
you bought this.
Except for every time it's happened, I've 100% already ate the product.
Oh, God.
So I'm like, too late now.
I'm still alive.
Yeah, like when this chicken that was recalled and the lunch meats were recalled, I got text messages about that. And I was like, it's definitely already in my stomach, so I'm not going to do anything.
Here we go.
Although one year there was salad recalled for Cyclospora, which is that little parasite that lives in salad mixes. And I had eaten the salad like earlier, and I ended up coming down with Cyclospora.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to go to a doctor, and I mean it's a parasite that makes you feel really bloated. Like so bloated I was in pain.
Oh no.
Where I was like, I can't like move because I hurt so bad. But it goes away by itself. And the doctor was like, I could give you something for it, but it's going to make your stomach really bad. So it's like you could see if it gets worse, and maybe you just get through this kind of a thing.
I wonder if you would have known if you didn't get that notification what you were down
I know.
with.
I would have just been like, what did I eat?
Yeah.
Because like,
I have a stomach ache.
Like popcorn's one of my favorite foods. Popcorn makes most people bloated just because there's so much air in it. And so I'm like, I probably would have eaten popcorn, just been like, I ate too much popcorn. Like, I often replace meals with popcorn. Yeah. So as a food safety person and someone who knows a lot about nutrition, I don't practice what I preach.
Okay, let's hop back into the
Back to the story. Okay. So the Bradford, England, October 31st, 1858. This is before Halloween was a thing, though, so it has nothing to do with Halloween.
Okay.
Because I thought about doing this for a Halloween episode, and I was like, it's actually got nothing to do with it. Bradford is a big textile city that is growing. This is right around Industrial Revolution, so things are kind of changing. Early morning, a doctor rushes to a home of a 9-year-old boy who is vomiting and convulsing. Nearby, a 14-year-old boy is suffering from the same conditions. By sunrise, both boys have died. At first, the doctor both thinks they have cholera because the symptoms are very similar. The vomiting, the not feeling well, diarrhea are all cholera. And we'll probably do an episode in the future about cholera.
I've never heard of cholera.
Cholera is a waterborne disease. It is actually why we know about like clean water and like well water, stuff like that. It's because cholera would spread throughout communities. Okay. And it would kill quite a few people. You don't really see cholera in most developed nations anymore, but it still does happen.
It has like flu-like symptoms?
Yeah. Okay. It's almost like a foodborne illness. Okay. But it doesn't go away, and a lot of people end up dying from it. But that's another episode. Add that to our list. He originally thinks they have cholera and is kind of going on, but nearby another doctor is going to the home of 2 other young boys who are both 3 and 5 years old. They are both already sick when he gets there, along with the father, although he's not as ill. Both the boys pass away while the doctor is there. Aww. The parents tell them that the boys earlier had peppermint candies the night before, and he brought them from a market nearby, and the father had one as well. And while the doctor is there, another member of the family eats some of the candy. I'm guessing stress eating, not thinking about it.
Well, if it's on the counter, we're all going to eat it.
And immediately gets sick.
Oh, boy.
So the doctor is right away is like, something's going on here. And he sends the candies to a chemist for testing. We'll come back to that. The candies are called Humbugs, and they are white and black peppermint candy. Oh. So I have no idea if Humbug has anything to do with this. I have no idea if the white and black striped candy has anything to do with this. But they are peppermint, and I thought, Christmas time, you have the peppermint candies and all those kind of things.
That makes me think, bah humbug,
And the candies, I was going to send you a picture, but I mean, it's a picture of a piece of candy. Yeah. But they look like little, they're called boiled candies. And that's one of the ways you make them is you put a bunch of ingredients, you boil them, and they become solid. You roll them out and cut them. You can watch YouTube videos of people making these candies. It's actually kind of fun because they're both hard and kind of soft. So they cut them while they're still hard or while they're soft. And then they form like these kind of candies you can suck and chew on. They're like a lozenge, like a cough drop or something, but they're candy. Got it. And these ones are white and black striped.
So it's kind of like the spearmint ones that are red and white, but they're black and white.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're peppermint flavored too. Yeah. So they're all kind of the same idea. And that's my tie into Christmas. That's all
I'll never eat one of those again.
Yes. More and more reports are coming in from people who are sick and dying. Most of them are children, and almost all of them have recently consumed the candy from the day before. Specifically, they all have these candies purchased from the Green Market, and it is a larger market in the city where people come from all over. And there's only one person in the market who sells them, and his name is William Hardiger, and he's known as Humbug Billy. Sorry. So
Billy.
I will just refer to him as Humbug for the rest of this because there are about 19 people named William in this.
Oh my gosh.
So in the 1850s, apparently they had like 5 names. William was the most popular one. So I'm just going to call him Humbug for the rest of us.
Okay.
They go to his house. The police go to his house because the doctor's obviously calling us in and is concerned. And they find him violently ill and in bed. He's really sick.
Oh, no.
The day before, he had half a candy as he's going to the market. He gets really sick, and he leaves his apprentice there to take care of it. And he gets a carriage and goes home, and he's really sick. He doesn't die, though. And the father doesn't die either.
Okay.
And we'll talk about why this is.
Adults.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Adults versus children. When the detective tells him there are other people sick and we're getting lots of reported people sick, this guy starts to freak out because he's like, what's going on? I'm really nervous.
Yeah.
And he says he sold about 5 pounds of the candies the day before, which is about 1,000 pieces.
Oh, no.
So it's a lot of candy out there. Immediately, and some of this I'll go through and get in detail, but this is just kind of the wrap-up story for it. Immediately, the police hire someone, and they start running through the streets, telling people, don't eat these candies, like town criers, just like screaming, like, stop, don't do this. Word spreads amongst the citizens, and the citizens start going from place to place and telling everybody, don't eat these candies, because they don't even know who purchased them. They're very popular. They're very cheap.
Yeah.
And I guess peppermint back there is like all the rage, so like lots of people have them, which is the 1850s. I'm sure people loved peppermint. It was like
so they
early
have,
flavors.
Like, Skittles and Starburst.
They didn't have good candy yet. That being said, like my favorite candy is a mint candy. And
really?
I love peppermint patties. I love Andes mints.
Yep.
I have a bowl of Andes mints that I probably have to buy new Andes mints like once a month.
Whoa.
I just like walk by and eat them all the time.
Do you like mint ice cream?
Nope.
I knew because the last episode that you liked ice cream, like, oh, he's for sure going to love like mint chocolate chip.
Nope. Don't like mint chocolate chip. I like Thin Mints.
Okay.
Those types of things.
Yeah.
I like Thin Mints in ice cream.
Okay.
But I don't like mint ice cream.
Got it.
And I like those little winter fresh candies.
Yes.
I like eat those like they're candy.
Though, and all of those things that you just listed, I don't even consider as candy. That's like when I don't know if
it's a vitamin.
You know when you go to like Olive Garden and they give, I don't know if you've been to Olive Garden recently, but we recently went and I haven't been since like my childhood, but they give those mints at the end.
Well, Andes. Those are Andes mints.
Yes.
They're so good.
I'm like, okay, this is my dessert, I guess. Yeah.
I briefly had a stint with a company where I made some of those and like saw the process of how they made those and everything.
That's cool.
And I was like obsessed since then. Huh. One of my very first jobs, I worked at a candy factory when it was a chocolate company, which I won't mention. And I made chocolates. So I worked in the back room where, like, I Love Lucy style.
Oh, cool.
Where candies would come down a conveyor belt and I would pull them into boxes and weigh the boxes and package them. That was one of my very first jobs. An interesting fact about that is when I was training, I got 1 day you work and train and then you get 2 days off and then you can come back and work 2 more. And I was like, that's weird. I just want to work. It's because you're allowed to eat as much as you want while you were there. And I ate so much candy that I was sick for like 2 days afterwards. So they just know everyone's going to do that. And the rule was you couldn't take any candy out, but you could keep I used to always sneak candy out.
Yeah.
Which is why I won't mention. I used to always sneak the candy out. But I ate so much the first couple of days. They made peanut clusters, like those chocolate covered peanuts.
Yum.
And they come down this conveyor belt that like shakes to remove the little pieces of chocolate.
Yep.
And I would be like 8 ounces in a box, 2 ounces for me. And we should do that all day. And I was so sick. And now I don't really like chocolate. Like chocolate's one of those things I'll have like one piece. I'm like, I'm good.
Same. Yeah, I don't really crave chocolate, but sweets like chewy, you know, have you ever had Mambas?
Yeah, I love Mambas. They're so good.
Now Mamba straws came out, all the like different straws. Yeah, that's
I love those.
Kryptonite.
I mostly do like a Starburst chewy candy now, but then even now I'm like, I don't eat very many of those.
Yeah.
Just because I think because at that same place I made saltwater taffy, so I worked in the saltwater taffy and made tons of that candy. It was like a nice little ski town.
Yeah.
So that was like one of the things people come and watch you make saltwater taffy, and that's what I did at like 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I ate so much of it that now I'm like, I don't know if I want any more saltwater taffy.
Have you ever had Mentos?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's my favorite. We got Mentos recently on a road trip, and you know it's like orange, yellow, and then you randomly get a pink, and I'm like, when I would get the pinks, I'd be like, all right, the rest for you. I'm taking the pinks.
Do you know they sell an all pink one now?
Yes, I did see that.
I only ever see it at the airport, but I travel, so I always get it.
Watch, you're gonna buy that.
I know. I'm so tomorrow when I'm flying out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, so they go from bar to bar to tell everybody to stop eating these candies because that's the only way they have to communicate is people yelling. The police also print flyers to distribute and try to get the word out. And they have to be really careful because people come in from all these other cities. So it's not just the city that's got like 50K people.
Yeah.
It's all these other cities. They're all coming to this market. So they really don't know how many people got sick because arsenic acts really fast. And arsenic, I ruined it. It's arsenic that's in the candy.
Okay. Well, we could go back if you want.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Okay.
It's not that big of a deal. We're going to get there in a second anyway.
Okay.
And they go back and arsenic wipes out of its system really quickly, so it's really hard to trace.
Yeah.
And they also don't have a ton of science back then to back it up. So these people are getting sick and they're dying potentially from other cities, and they would have no idea. This is just the ones they know about who people got sick and now.
Was it arsenic that was in the Tylenol murders too?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a theme.
Yeah.
We'll talk about why arsenic is so prominent as well too.
Perfect.
So they distribute these flyers, and they're talking to Humbug Billy, and he lets them know that he actually doesn't make the candy. He just buys it and sells it, and he gets it from a confectioner named Joseph Neal.
Oh, Joseph. Okay. Let's track him down.
So now we're going to back up on the story. So that's what's happening now. We're going to back up a few days and talk about what happened here. Okay. In the weeks before this regular market, Joseph Neal was due to make a batch of these lozenges for Humbug, and he had run out of a product that is called Daft. He makes the candy like normal using sugar and peppermint oil, but something that is really common at the time is to replace the sugar with something because sugar is really expensive, like $70 a pound.
Wow.
Which is very, very expensive when you're talking about the 1850s and people.
And the amount that he's using, for sure.
So they often cut the sugar with something else. And generally what they use is a product called Daft, and that is any white powder used to cut the sugar. Any white powder. So it's pretty broad right there.
Yeah.
They also don't tell people this is cut with Daft. That's what they do. He uses a thing called Terra Alba to cut his sugar, which is basically the same thing as plaster of Paris.
Plaster of Paris. Never heard that either.
Plaster of Paris is what like you use to make like what is it called? Where you put like the paper and the paste around like a balloon.
Oh, paper mache?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, I know that doesn't sound edible.
Yeah, well, it is just like a dry powder that is used when you add to liquid that forms like a solid kind of a thing.
Okay.
It's often used in like construction and stuff like that.
Ah.
The good thing is while this sounds kind of gross, it's basically harmless. It's not dangerous for you to eat it, and it's a really acceptable practice, especially during this time with candy makers. A lot of candy makers are cutting the sugar because it's the most expensive thing. This is all unregulated. So someone else making this and doing that and then selling it to someone who then sells it to someone, it's all unregulated, so they have no traceability. They don't know what's going on right there. So Neal asks someone who lives with him, because he's run out of this Daft, to visit a druggist in a nearby town around 5 miles away, which if you think about the 1850s, 5 miles, you're walking there and you're walking back. So that's a hike.
That's a jaunt.
And to go away and purchase the Daft. The druggist, Charles Hodgson, was ill in bed when he gets there, and he has his assistant, a teenage boy, go get it for him. He tells him it's upstairs in a barrel in an attic in a corner and describes it to him. And Goddard, the boy, had only been working there for a few weeks, and he's looking for an apprenticeship, so he's helping him out. So Goddard went to the attic, and he takes 12 pounds, 5 kilograms of powder from a cask. What he did not realize at the time was there were 2 identical barrels in the same location right next to each other. And instead of taking this plaster of Paris, whatever, he takes out of the barrel arsenic trioxide.
Oh, no.
And it wasn't labeled. The only label is on the bottom of the barrel, so there's no way that he would have known.
That's a big yikes.
So they're thinking they're replacing it with something else, and this is actually completely different.
Yes.
So Neal employs a sweets maker to manufacture the lozenge. He makes this batch with 12 pounds of Daft, which is the arsenic, 40 pounds of sugar, and 4 pounds of gum plus peppermint oil to give it its flavoring. And they mix it all together, and they immediately both notice that the sweets don't look the same. They're not the right texture. Their color's a little bit off. And they both get sick while they're making this. They feel ill while they're making this.
Oh my gosh.
He thought it was a little bit more free-flowing. It wasn't as thick as it was supposed to be. And it was a little bit smoother. It's like it wasn't as, candy has a little grit to it. And it's also like a darker shade of color. Because they're working with it, they both kind of feel ill, and they're suffering fits of vomiting while they're making it.
Oh my gosh.
And Neal, who was the one who's going to be selling this to other people, occasionally tastes it. And he tests one of the lozenges and begins vomiting. Neither men put it together that it's the lozenges that they're making, though, or the candy that they're making.
They're literally making suicide sweets.
Yes. There are so many cases during this story where there was like, here's a red flag, here's a red flag, here's a red flag, but like they just zip on by, and no one stops it. And that's one of the points of the story is how bad it used to be.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about adulterated product now, it's like, oh, you have no idea how far we've come with adulteration and how bad it used to be. Okay, so then Humbug collected the sweets from Neil on October 30th. He also noted that they were a different color from normal batches, and they negotiate a lower price for the batches. Okay. So throughout this entire process, there's one person after another who says something's not right about these candies. No one stops it. Yeah. So he basically gets a half... Oh, I put a half D per pound, and I have no idea what money D stands for, but I'm assuming it's some whatever they used in 1850. Yeah. It's not a pound, I guess, for his usual price. And he sold the sweets later that day on the night October 30th for 2 ounces, 57 grams for 1.5. And he ate some of the sweets, and by 5:30 was when he was sick. So while he's there, he eats one, and he gets sick pretty quickly. He goes home. He's very ill. And he has his assistant look after that stall until that night. And by that point, they close, and about 1,000 sweets have been sold.
Wow. Okay, let's just I just want to recap this. So the guy that sold the arsenic got sick, and then the guy that was selling that batch got sick, and then sold it to the kids, and the kids are sick now. That's okay.
The one thing that isn't thrown off here is the pharmacist was sick. The druggist that they bought it from was sick. Not related whatsoever. He was just sick.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, the druggist was sick. So someone else gets this for him.
Yeah.
The person who's making the candy gets sick. The person who's selling the made candy gets sick. The person who is selling the made candy gets sick. And now all these people are getting sick.
Oh, no.
Okay, so now we're back to present day. So on Sunday morning, the local police are informed of deaths of a man named Elijah White and the 2 boys, 9 and 14, that we talked about. And they are sons of another man who is sick too, but he does not die. And originally they think it's cholera. And this is really common at the time because arsenic mimics a lot of other diseases. Okay. So the symptoms for both include vomiting, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. And that is similar to what's going on in England by those affected by cholera. Cholera is kind of massively sweeps through towns, sometimes wipes out entire villages and stuff like that. Everyone gets cholera because it's normally poisoned in the water. And we'll talk about that someday. Okay. I'll put it on my notes to talk about maybe the next one. When more deaths are reported throughout the day, the police is sent to investigate. He makes a connection right away between the sweets and the deaths. He visits the candy seller, Humbug, and seizes the remaining stock, which was just under 36 pounds. He then goes to Neil's premises where he buys it from and seized 6 more ounces of fragments of the sweets that were made there. And then a detective who later comes in went to visit Hodgson, the guy that was the pharmacist, the druggist, I guess. They don't call him pharmacists, they call him druggists. I don't know if there's a difference between those things. And then he indicates, like, they're going through and trying to figure out Neil's, like, they're making him walk through, and the pharmacist isn't there yet. It's just the assistant. And he's like, where did you get this from? The assistant says it's that one. Neil, the one who originally makes the candy or sells the candy, sticks his finger in it, tries it, and he's immediately like, this is not what it is, which is also arsenic, and you just stuck your finger in and tasted it. Oh, no. I'm glad we have gotten a little bit better about how we test for things these days.
Things here.
And he knows right away this isn't right. The pharmacist comes back at that point, and the pharmacist says, no, that's arsenic. Like, that's not where it's supposed to come from. At the time, they arrest the young teenager boy who distributed it, immediately the assistant, but they don't arrest anyone else right yet.
Okay, why would the druggist have a thing of arsenic? What was it being used for?
It's used for a lot of things.
Okay.
That's where this becomes risky because arsenic for a while was used in a ton of things. It's still used in a ton of things. It's just poisonous to consume. Yeah. And a druggist at that time wasn't just selling drugs to treat things. They were also selling just basic supplies sometimes. Okay. I guess that's the difference. A pharmacy, you don't go and get supplies and stuff. But they also use arsenic to make certain alloy metals. And it's used in those ingredients for like blacksmithing and things like that too. Okay. We'll go into more about what arsenic's actually used for towards the end. And I will probably say a bunch of things wrong. The chief constable is kept aware of everything that's going on, and he is the one who starts sending out the town criers.
Yep.
People start going from town to town. And this is a smaller city. I mean, it's 50,000 people, and all these people are getting sick, and you don't have anything else to do except for hang out in these places, so word spreads really fast. He sends out people at that night, and by 11 p.m. that night, he has all the posters up saying, like, this is the issue. So they act really, really quickly, but so does arsenic. So it's kind of too late for a lot of people who've already consumed them, but they stop a lot of people from consuming more of them, which is great, because if they wouldn't have done this, he still had 36 more pounds to sell or something, a large amount, and so he could have continued to sell those. Their local doctor is seeing what's going on, putting this all together. The original doctor that sees people getting sick right after they eat them, he puts it together and he sends it to a chemist, and he thinks it's arsenic, and he tells the chemist he thinks it's arsenic, and the animal chemist tests it and confirms that it is arsenic, and they're able to match it up with the same arsenic.
Whew.
He continues to treat about 60 patients for the poisoning over the next few days.
Man.
On November 1st, that morning, the number of dead has risen to 12, with 78 people already really ill. They visit Neil this police visit Neil for a second time and search his house more thoroughly. And there they find hundreds more fragments on the drying boards and the cutting boards where they make the candy. His wife also admits that she found fragments and has thrown them into the fire to destroy the evidence, which is weird because
it's not like he knew he was selling arsenic.
And they already know. They already know it's the candy. So what are you going to do? It's like, oh, we destroyed the candy, but that we already knew was made here, and we've already said it was made here, and we already did all the it's weird, but panicking kind of a thing. She also goes to their own sweet shop, and she brings bags of mixed candy back that contain the lozenges or lozenge fragments. While the police were there, Neil runs off. He panics and makes a break for it. And they pursue him. They can't find him. Eventually, they find him again the same day. He just comes back to his house and is sitting at his kitchen. Again, I think people are just freaking out and panicking and doing crazy stuff, which I don't know. I think people probably would still do today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They bring the young boy in front of the magistrates on that Monday, and he is to remain in custody, and they open an inquest the next day. They also meet and decide that the candy maker, Humbug, should also be arrested and reprimanded.
Okay.
So now they're starting to make arrests, and they're holding these people in jail.
Throw them in jail.
1850, probably not the best place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. On Wednesday, they also decide that Neil should be arrested, although he's released on bail pretty quickly. And they hear back from the chemist who estimated that each sweet contained 9 grains, which is 580 milligrams of arsenic. Wow. He added that 4.5 grains was sufficient to kill an adult male. He later made an analysis of the lozenges, which said each contained between 11 and 16 grains, so between 710 and 1,040 milligrams. And he confirms that the arsenic and that is the arsenic from the same barrel, and each candy contains enough arsenic to kill 4 men.
Whoa. Suicide sweets, I'm saying.
Yeah. And
terrible.
It makes sense if you're a small child eating candy, you're probably going to eat multiple ones, while an adult's going to have a smaller portion of them and maybe just have one, and they're not going to eat, and they're much larger anyway, so they're not going to get as sick.
Yeah.
The city's population is about 50K, so basically everyone knows someone who's affected right now, and it's kind of a big deal. By the end of Wednesday, 15 people have been reported dead, 11 of whom were children. 13 more were listed as dangerously ill, and another 150 were ill but not in danger.
Wow.
They meet again. The magistrates meet again on Friday and determine that the 3 men in custody should be sent to trial and charged for manslaughter by negligence. Bail for Humbug and Neil was set for 200 pounds, and Goddard, the assistant, was set for 100 pounds. The number of dead had risen to 17, with 196 people ill by this. And eventually this comes up to 21 people died and over 200 were sick. And the figures are really hard to find in this because, again, it's really hard to trace. It's old time, and people aren't really sure what happened here.
It's still really sad because it's obvious that they didn't do it on purpose. It was just obviously a mistake, but obviously they didn't have situations where they were testing food before they were giving them to them before.
Well, to follow off of that, on the 9th of December in 1858, the judge, Baron Warren, which sounds like a judge, in his opening remarks, he said that there was no case for Neil to answer to, as he was not present when the arsenic was purchased or when the lozenges were made. And he dismissed the case against him. Goddard, Warren said, is the young boy, was only following the instructions of his master and also had no case to answer. His case was also dismissed. Warren said the case against Humbug or Hodgkins should stand and that he would be tried later in the month. He had a trial opened on December 21st for the manslaughter of Elizabeth Mary Migley, who was a 7-year-old girl who died from it. He was found guilty of the proceedings. But after hearing some more of the evidence, the judge stopped the proceedings and said there was no case for him to answer to because he didn't know he just bought the candy and sold it. He had no idea. And he instructed the jury to record a verdict of not guilty, which they did.
Wow.
So all 3 of these men were arrested. None of them actually go to jail. None of them tried.
Yeah.
While Humbug was free and did not go to jail, he was paralyzed for the rest of his life due to the poisoning.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yes. So, and I mean, what does it serve? What's the point?
Yeah.
This man's selling candy. He's not trying to kill people.
Yeah.
The guy ahead of him is trying to make business from his candy business. He's not trying to kill people.
Yeah.
This pharmacist, it was all an accident.
Yeah.
It's a series of bad events.
Yeah.
That there were, signs that people should stop and not do things. But like, why would you punish this man who's trying to sell candy? Like, obviously, he's not trying to hurt people.
Yeah, he's probably devastated just having that on his conscience.
Oh my gosh, 21 people died, most of which are children, and all these other people are sick. They probably never would buy candy from you again.
Yeah.
It's ruined both of their lives. And this poor pharmacist kid is like a teenager and is just trying to get a job and a career and everything. So, it wasn't helping anybody to put them in trial. Although that's not the case now. Now people can be held accountable for it because most of the time it's determining, did you know that you were adulterating something or did you not know you were adulterating? If you know that you did it on purpose and you did it dangerously, it's a thing.
Yeah.
So the deaths led to calls for legislation to stop similar events occurring, and the Adulteration of Food or Drink Act of 1860 was passed into law. And this was because there was a big public outcry of people being upset. A, they didn't know they were being fed this kind of stuff.
Right.
And B, people died. Not only are you lying to us, but you're lying to us in a way that could kill us.
Yep.
But the Bradford incident wasn't the only incident, but obviously this is one of the ones that caused a lot of public outrage. It was instrumental in leading this law, but it wasn't really effective.
Okay.
And so the law says, oh gosh, it's very legal terms. Every person who shall sell any article of food or drink with which, to the knowledge of such person, any ingredient or material injurious to the health of persons eating or drinking such article has been mixed, and every person who shall sell as pure or unadulterated any article or food or drink which is adulterated or not pure.
Wow.
Basically, you're responsible if you are telling people it's pure and it's not pure.
Yep.
And you are doubly responsible if it can make people sick.
Yeah.
But it's not super effective because the wording is very vague.
Yeah.
Also, the punishment's not very much.
Did they even have a way back then to test if something was harmful?
They do. I mean, they can test for things like arsenic, and they can. I mean, they're not testing at this point for salmonella, listeria.
Yeah.
They're not doing that kind of thing. They can test for some of these metals, and we'll get in the history of arsenic a little bit. But we've known arsenic has been deadly to humans for a long time. But that didn't stop us from using it. Clearly. It's basically next to useless, as the provisions were too ambiguous. Basically, they had to prove you knew it. They had to prove that you knew it was dangerous. They had to prove that you weren't telling people. And how do you do that? Because it's not like you're selling online. You're selling in person, and it's all hearsay kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And the penalties for it were £5. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no.
You're like,
yeah.
Somebody,
and if you sell a bunch of it, who cares kind of thing. I mean, it ruins your reputation and whatever. But if you're a traveling person who's doing this or something like that.
It would never even get tied to you.
It would never get tied to you. And so it didn't really do much. They are still felt later, though, and because of the Bradford, things go into act. There's a Pharmacy Act of 1868 was passed, which basically says that they can't store poisons next to food items. They have to label things differently.
Okay.
Poisons have to go in special containers.
Makes sense.
And that is eventually passed on to even more laws.
Okay.
So now laws state that if you sell those things, you have to trace who sells them, where it's going, how it got there. There's a chain of custody that follows it. There's a chain of destruction that follows certain poisons, too. At the time, they didn't have any of that. So you could order a keg of arsenic and they'd be like, okay, whatever, come pick it up. And store it wherever you want to, however you want to. It could be right next to your flour that you use for bread. And arsenic's very toxic. So even a little bit transferred over could be a huge deal.
I don't know why this is coming to my head, but when I think about people who overdose on drugs and thinking about where they got it and who they got it from, I'm like, what if they were legal and we could trace back to cut this with something that's deadly.
That is actually a huge point of why they want to legalize drugs is the traceability of drugs, because drugs are adulterated. I mean, even like, I don't do cocaine, but I know people who do. And I know people who stop doing cocaine because so much of it is cut with fentanyl. And it is adulterating of that product.
Totally.
And it used to be that, you know, cocaine was cut with like baby formula. You know, there's movies about like how pure is the cocaine kind of a thing. But now they're cutting it with even more dangerous drugs.
That's scary.
So it's adulterating of product. But if you legalize that product and then you have to test it, you go that. But I went to an outdoor fest recently that wasn't like a rave or anything. There was just a bunch of bands there. And there were people walking around that were just like giving away free test kits. Like they know people are going to do it. Here's test kits. Test it to make sure it's safe before you do it. And you've heard about, you know, big Woodstock. They had that thing where people were saying, don't try this LSD because it has a bad reaction and stuff like that. So drugs have been often one of the most adulterated products. Even pot is often adulterated. Usually now it's not because it's legalized, so you know what you're paying for, so you better be getting the good stuff. But you know, before it was legal, people would talk about, you know, buying bad pot or the stuff that was mostly seeds or something that's not really there for it. But neither one of us do drugs. Don't fire us, Microback.
Dare.
I don't know about Dare, but yeah.
I was a part of Dare when I was younger.
Oh God, my dad was a police officer growing up.
Oh,
so we were for sure a part of Dare. Like we had to go multiple times. Anyway. Okay, so that's kind of the end of the story, but I want to talk a little bit more about these adulterations, heavy metals, and arsenic itself. We test at Microback a ton of heavy metal products. We do this both in environmental and in life science and in food, because heavy metals, they talk about the big four, arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury, are almost completely banned. You can't have any of those in food, although there is research to say that you can have some in food. And they are often adulterated into products, meaning that they're there and they're not supposed to be. Not because people are doing things wrong, but because they accidentally get there. And we'll talk about how that happens. So we call those heavy metals. That turns out to be an awful term, because what makes a metal heavy is its density, not necessarily if it's toxic. So if you look about all the things that are part of the heavy metals group, it's a ton of different ones. Not all of them are toxic. Some of them are actually nutritious and you have to have them. And so there's a big fight about what heavy metals are, and there's been a lot of arguments from scientists to get rid of that term, and nothing else has stuck. So we don't really talk about heavy metals in the right way, and people hear about it. But I talk about heavy metals as a scientist, and I say heavy metals, and I think of all the metals. So I say, oh, this one had a lot of heavy metals. Sometimes I'm talking about iron. Iron is a heavy metal, and it is very healthy for you, and you need to have some of that. But people might think I'm talking about arsenic or lead. And I'm like, well, those are two different things.
Does this tie to dioxin at all? When I'm thinking, when I used to work in the prep lab, there was like in the metals lab, but I feel like...
I think dioxin, they're probably looking in that same type of process. I don't know if they would consider that part of the heavy metals group or anything like that, but maybe. I don't know enough about that off the top of my head. Okay, so we normally talk about, there's 118 known chemical elements that would be considered heavy metals. About 96% of them are the ones that we are mostly talk about, but only 3 of them are actually follow underneath all the categories that we consider heavy metals, and that's mercury, lead, and bismuth, not arsenic. That's why scientists kind of hate this term, why a lot of people just use it. And as a scientist, I use the term all the time, not realizing it's confusing, and I'm going to have to get better about it. It also includes that are good for us, things like iron, copper, and tin. Those things are heavy metals as well. We need some of those in our diets on a regular basis. They also consider precious metals like silver, gold, and platinum. Those are heavy metals. We also consider some things that are considered light metals because they're not very heavy in the heavy metal, like magnesium, aluminum, and titanium.
Whoa, there's some of these things that we're like, people take magnesium and iron on purpose. And
a lot of these things, they're all considered heavy metals, but when you hear, oh, this has heavy metals in it, you're like, oh no. But it's not the ones that, most of the time people are talking about the deadly ones. Although, you know, there's things in there that you can't have, gallium, thallium, hafnium. Those are all considered heavy metals.
Lithium. Just kidding.
I don't think lithium actually might be the one. Cobalt is in there. But those are all heavy metals. Zinc is a heavy metal.
I was for some reason thinking about when you travel and they ask you if you have batteries.
Arsenic is used in making of batteries.
So
that's why you see it in some things as well. We'll get to that as well. Arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and lead are the highly poisonous ones, and that's what we're really talking about when we say heavy metals. And their potential sources of heavy metal poisoning include mining, tailing, I have no idea what that is, smelting, industrial waste, agricultural runoff, occupational exposure, paints, and treated timber, all treated with heavy metals, which they'll run off and they can get into our water systems, which get into our food, and that's how they get there. They're also naturally occurring in the soil in very trace amounts, and they're naturally occurring in some human bodies. You have to have some of these in there, although the argument for how much you have to have is really difficult.
Yeah.
They are usually less reactive than other metals, which means they stick around a lot longer. And when they form salts, those salts are usually very stable. So when we talk about that arsenic thiacide, what was it? That was a very stable one that could stick around for a long time. They are relatively rare in the Earth's crust, but they are present. And you actually have to worry about like floodwaters. Sometimes there are rocks that will naturally have lead and arsenic, cadmium in them. And when the things flood and it goes over the streams, it'll wash over those rocks, introducing it to water. So it's not even necessarily people being wasteful. It's just naturally there. And it, you know, the water runs over rocks, it starts to erode them, and that erosion can actually have some heavy metals in it.
For some reason, I'm thinking of stormwater. Is that
stormwater comes up a lot too. Because you think of like, okay, this is the stream, and we control that stream. Often that stream is in a bank or something like that. But when it's stormwater, everything's floating over everything else. Out of people's yards, out of people's houses. And these actually are, so here, this might help. Heavy metals are used commonly today in golf clubs, cars, antiseptics, self-cleaning ovens, plastics, solar panels, mobile phones, and particle accelerators. The last one's kind of fun.
So none of those things are edible.
None of those things are edible, but they might be around. So if there's floodwaters and it's washing over them, you know, those batteries and things like that, they could end up in your water that ends up in your things that you're eating on a day-to-day basis.
Keep your golf clubs off the floor.
Yes. Well, and just be aware of when there's floodwaters, you might want to be paying attention to what's going on there. The good thing is it's not like a single molecule of arsenic is going to kill you. Arsenic is a naturally occurring symbol. Its atomic number is 33. And I always tell people I have a biochemistry degree, but I'm more of the bio, less of the chemistry. So I always have to look up chemistry things to make sure I know what I'm talking about.
I remember in high school when we had the periodic table and we would like memorize, and I like was the queen of it. I studied biology, so loved that. But now if I looked at the periodic table, it would look like a foreign language to me.
Like if you show me a chemical structure, the chemical symbol, I could probably tell you what element it is. I could probably find it on there really quickly, tell you very basic facts about it. That's about it. I don't remember any of that because I don't use it as much anymore. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so like that's not me. I could tell you all about salmonella though. So if you want to talk about salmonella or listeria, I'm ready for that one. So it's a trade-off. I learned it. I wrote it down on a test. I forgot it not long afterwards.
Passed the class. On to the next.
It is notoriously toxic and has been known to be toxic for a long time. It is primarily used, arsenic is used as an alloy for lead in car batteries and in ammunition. It is commonly a semiconductor, so it's actually pretty good for the things that we like to use it for. And it is used in things like pesticides and herbicides, treated wood products, and insecticides. The arsenic trioxide, which was the poison that was actually put into these candies, that's what it's used for. So we're pulling away from using arsenic as much because we know that it's dangerous and the runoff has been really bad, but it's still used in a lot of those chemicals. So it makes sense when you see it, okay, that's the poison that's used in a lot of these things. That's how it gets into your water. It's been known since ancient times to be humans, and there are some bacteria that use arsenic in their metabolic systems, and they produce arsenic as well. So there's some stuff out there. Trace amounts of arsenic have been shown to be useful in the human body, but as soon as you go over that amount, it becomes very deadly very quickly.
Useful?
Yes.
Like in what way?
It's considered an essential dietary element. Like some animals have to have a certain portion of arsenic in very small trace amounts. They have shown this to be the case for rats, hamsters, goats, chickens, and some humans.
Say rats. I don't know why.
Well, because that's where everything studies on. They have not been able to conduct any studies that determine for sure, like if you have no arsenic, will you be fine? Or if you have a small arsenic through your life, does it lead to worse things? They don't really know what that is, and they're not really sure what role it serves in the human metabolism, but there's been studies that say that we have to have a little bit of it. That's the same with a lot of the heavy metals. We have to have some of it in our body because it's a basic building block kind of a thing, but it's not great. It occurs in almost all life, arsenic poisoning. There's very few things that won't die if exposed to too many arsenic. And the larger than needed is very sensitive. So like there's an amount that you can have, that's fine. If you go over that, it's almost certain death or illness.
Okay. Yep.
And arsenic contamination in groundwater is a problem that affects millions of people across the world still to this day. And it's from those things we said. It can come from natural soil, storms. Yep. It can come from contamination as well.
Yep.
While this law is in effect for this, what we talked about now in the 1850s, it took the United States much, much longer before they started putting in laws to protect against adulteration and arsenic. And they are still laws that have to be built. And some of them are based on the laws that were developed way, way, way long ago, and they need constant updating. The Environmental Protection Agency states that all forms of arsenic are a serious risk to human health. So they don't say any of it is safe, even though there's some studies that say it might be. They've just basically said no. And it is classified as a group A carcinogen. So we just talked about cancer not that long ago. So tying it all back, which was nice when you asked last episode, when you asked like, oh, what is a carcinogen? I was like, oh, arsenic. I just did this.
Yes.
Okay, some a little bit information about adulteration that we already talked about. And this has been common since the Middle Ages, from the 1800s. As populations grew, we just didn't have enough products to spread around, so they started adulterating it. They also did it to cost reduction, which is more of a greed thing. And like I said, it was very expensive. And this is kind of the things that have been going on for a while. They fall into three main categories. There was harmless additions, such as chicory to coffee, which is just another plant into coffee. It doesn't hurt anything. Adding flour to mustard and watering down milk. Those are types of things that we do there too.
Okay.
Other serious ones were the addition of indigestible ingredients, including introduction of alum or gypsum or chalk into white bread that your body didn't really break down. You basically just passed it, but they weren't necessarily dangerous. They also put tree and shrub leaves into tea leaves. So you know, you buy a pound of tea, but how much of it was really tea? And then the final one they categorize as dangerous addition to foods, including salts of copper, red lead glaze, that's a hard combination of words, used as colorants, which is what we're talking about with the cinnamon, that red lead was used to make the cinnamon a darker color. It was also used to make it heavier, and we believe that's how some of the cinnamon got contaminated with high level amounts.
Where does the red dye drop into all of those, that everyone's talking about in candy right now?
I think that would probably, it's not considered dangerous because it's considered a carcinogen in high amounts, but it's also not, your body can digest it. So I think it'd probably fall in the, I don't think that's an adulterant. I think that would be a dangerous additive.
Okay.
Adulterant would be saying like, oh, we made it red using like hibiscus leaves, and you're actually using that one. So you're saying you're doing something, but you're using something else to make it that color.
Got it.
And you're not
being
forthright with it. You're not putting red number 40 on the label or whatever it is. And this also includes mercury salts added to cheese, which that's a story we'll talk about in the future. And the use of arsenic, sulfuric acid, and nitric acid was added to a lot of different food products as well.
Yikes.
Usually unknowingly, sometimes not so unknowingly. There's a ton of people that have talked about the different adulterations. There was a scientist who between 1850 and 1856 examined 3,000 samples of food and found 65% of them were contaminated with adulterants. And that included mostly things to split products. And those included things like Daft, which is what we talked about today, Duck, Duff, Derby, Maltum, Flash, and Stuff were all labels that they used as adulterants.
It sounds like the names of reindeer.
the bad Christmas reindeer that come up. These are the ones that Santa's not bringing good toys. And the one that was used in Bradford was Daft. Okay. So this is the one we're talking about, that one. Another kind of weird thing is in the Victoria era, we used ingredients that are adulterants in common household products, including arsenic. They used them in medicines. They used them in candles and wallpapers and furnishings and colorants for food. It was also used as poison for murder. It is referenced in Shakespeare. So many people died of arsenic poison, both deliberate and accidental, that there was a legislation called the Arsenic Act of 1851, which was before this happened. So this happened in 1858. So the arsenic, they already knew that it was dangerous and there was an act for it. It was the first piece of UK legislation to attempt to control the sale of a poisonous substance. And it said that it should only be sold to adults. There should be a record of its sale, and it should be signed by both the seller and the buyer. And there should be a witness to the sale as well if the buyer was unknown to the seller.
So they didn't follow those rules when they...
Well, he didn't know he was selling it.
Oh my gosh.
So they said there's rules about arsenic and how you can sell it. There's not rules about how you can store it and what to do with those kind of things.
These stories make me really happy that I was not alive during these eras.
Eventually, they said any arsenic not to be used for medical purposes was to be colored with soot or indigo to differentiate it from other white powder, so it looked different.
Smart.
And there was no restriction on who could sell arsenic, which was a bad problem. No license was required by any trader and was able to sell it as long as they kept a record of the sale. So all that has changed. They've made those rules a lot different now, so they track it, obviously. It did not bring an end to arsenic-related problems. They continued to go on, and they used to be used, and they were widespread use in household goods. And then in 1860, an article by The Lancet asked how to convict of arsenic poisoning when ladies use arsenic cosmetics, when confectioners sell arsenal sweetmeats, with paper hangers clothe our walls with arsenic hangings, and impregnate with the air with fine arsenic dust. Above all, when chemists sell arsenic for a tooth powder and label it as mercury. Basically, they're saying, like, how can you hold anyone responsible for this when they're allowed to use it in all these things?
Yeah.
Arsenic was used as makeup. It is what they believe the first Queen Elizabeth used to make her face super white.
Yeah.
Was arsenic included in her makeup. Many women took arsenic to have a paler complexion because that was considered beautiful. So it was used all the time, and people were like, oh yeah, this is, if I take it in small amounts. However, many of them were very faint, very weak.
Yeah.
And often they could die from overwhelming.
Just slowly poisoning themselves.
Yes. And the last thing I have is a quote, and I'm not entirely sure if this quote is from Humbug Billy or from Neil, the man who he bought it from. He later justified his actions by saying, where I use a pound of it, there are people who use a ton of it. And that was his justification for why it was okay for him to use arsenic, because he didn't use as much as other people.
Goodness.
Or he didn't use as much as other people, so it was okay. It worked. He didn't go to jail, but it was also
deadly, very deadly.
And it was also bad practices. You were essentially telling people, it's fine. Don't worry about this.
Wow. Okay. Well, I will not be eating any spearmint candies, and
just don't eat the black and white ones. And if they taste, the other thing is, I believe it's arsenic. It has an almond smell to it, or an almondy flavor to it.
Just had an almond croissant at lunch.
I was gonna say we just had an almond croissant.
My gosh.
So oftentimes when they used arsenic as a poisoning, they would put it with almond to hide the scent.
Oh my gosh.
Because you'd be like, oh, you're eating like an almond cookie or eating something like this. And it was actually arsenic in there to mask it.
You know what that makes me think of is, have you ever had like a chocolate bar that tastes like orange? And that, like, things get, I don't know why people use orange flavoring for chocolate things.
Yeah, I guess I have. I've never thought about it though.
It's so, I don't know why that bothers me so much. Even like banana bread I've had where somebody used orange flavoring, and like the two taste together just throw me off, but it's like very common. I don't know why they do that.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, is I'm allergic to peaches.
Yes.
And I have to have very limited on some things for my diet, because things like tropical flavor is often includes peaches.
Apparently apple juice too.
Apple, that's pears usually.
Yeah, okay.
Because they taste very similar, because they have kind of a similar growth and texture to them.
Yeah.
But peach is often used to give that tropical flavor.
Yeah.
And they don't have to label that they use peaches.
Oh, no.
They can just say tropical flavorings. So like I can't have some sangrias because it has peach in there, and I can't have some wines because they have peach in there. The last time I had an allergic reaction was a mystery flavor.
Yeah.
And I discovered the mystery.
So you can't have peachos.
I've never,
Those are so good. But knowing it's candy, it probably has no peach in there whatsoever.
Well, I'm allergic to the artificial flavor too. So not just real peaches, but also artificial flavoring too.
Okay.
Not as severe as a real peach, but still, allergens can get worse as you get older. So I just avoid all of it. But
yeah, be safe.
It's happened a few times. I've definitely had like peach schnapps in a drink and been like, that was delicious. What was that? And they're like, oh, it had peach schnapps in it. I'm like, uh-oh. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah. Was there any peach in the peach schnapps?
Yeah. But that is the story of Humbug Billy and the Bradford Sweets Poisoning.
Oh, that was a good one. Very festive, very sad. But yes, let's avoid arsenic in our food.
Yeah, well, silver lining, we hopefully won't see those types of things happening again, at least on purpose.
Yeah.
And they've changed the law, so your arsenic is not stored next to your plaster of Paris, which is stored next to your sugar.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're cutting back on some of those things.
No, cutting your food with dangerous ingredients. And I did hear that recently they're cracking down more on ingredients that are allowed in food. So
nutrition is so difficult because, we still to this day do not know if eggs are good or bad for you. It changes like every year or so.
That's so crazy.
There was a time where they said like a beer a day was good for you or a glass of wine was good for you. And now they're like no alcohol is good for you. It's just because everyone's bodies are so different.
Yep.
And nutrition is really difficult to pin down. Good fats, bad fats, like it's so hard. And, the answer isn't to remove it all from your diet. It's what's the correct balance.
Yeah. I've been hearing a lot about creatine lately. Like originally it wasn't supposed to be good, but I guess for women it keeps water in their muscles and your brain cognitivity is better. And apparently small doses is great for women.
I know if you take creatine right before you work out, like
you get swole.
You get swole. You look extra pumped. So like,
yeah,
that's, I don't know. It changes all the time. So it's really difficult to pin down. And it's, it blurs the line of when is that adulteration of food product? When is it just adding extra ingredients or filler to product? That's super tricky. And so how do you pin any of that down? And what's good food and what's bad food? Who knows? At this point, when people say like, oh, I don't eat fast food. I'm like, oh, is fast food really that bad for you? Like how different is it from everything else?
Yeah, that you're eating.
Yeah.
Same with like sugar content. I saw a video the other day where it was saying like an acai bowl had the same amount of sugar as like eating 4 donuts. And I'm like,
I'd rather have the 4 donuts.
Yeah, it's like for this whole time I thought I was being healthy, and like turns out you're not.
Well, and it's you go from one thing to another. Like, oh, it's got more of one thing, but way more like salt content. People like, well, this has no salt, and you look at what else it has in it, and it's like, well,
twice something else.
Twice of something else that's just as bad. So it's like, well, you got to balance this out and figure out. Although I think they just removed Lunchables because of their salt content from recommended school lunches.
Really?
Because they used to have them as this is a good school lunch. You could have a Lunchable, and now they're like, there's too much salt in that. You can't have it.
Do you remember those little pizza things that you could get?
Do I remember them? I still eat them.
Oh my God, they're so good.
Sometimes when I go to volleyball, if I don't have a lot of times, I will get a pizza Lunchable and 100% eat like a pizza Lunchable between like matches. Like if I have like an hour off or something, I'm like just going to town on it.
I did not know those were still for sale. It has been a full like probably 20 years since I had one of those.
And they're still good. They don't taste any different. Every time I eat one, I think of that little bread that comes on. I'm like, this is plastic.
Yeah.
Like that's not real bread. Like I know it's not good for me, but they're tasty.
But it's funny thinking back because I could have a Twinkie that I'm not a Twinkie person, but like I've had a Twinkie, but now having one 20 years later, I'm like, this is what I was like begging my mom to have from the grocery store.
They're not good anymore. Yeah. Like a Hostess cupcakes and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't want this. This isn't good for me.
We can like tell that it's not like good ingredients.
I mean, I'll still eat them.
Yeah. Never say no to a sweet.
Yeah. Just I'm not buying a case of them and eating them in like a day.
Yeah. Ho-hos. Oh my gosh. Love those.
Oh, God.
Okay, well, speaking of food, should we jump into our What Are We Eating segment? Where we talk about what we're consuming, whether it's food, pop culture, or anything we can't stop consuming.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. You go first.
Okay, so 2 things. Part of my job is I do a lot of TV interviews. We're now doing live podcasts. Yes. I also do all of our webinars.
Yeah.
And we talked about this at lunch, that when I'm doing a webinar, I'm staring into a reflection of me and a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
And all I can see is me. I don't see anyone looking back at me.
Yeah.
And I don't hear anybody else. Yep. You're on them too. You co-host them with me, and you're kind of like running the show and behind the scenes. But that's it. You're the only voice I hear.
Yeah.
So I just stare at my face, and then I'm on TV doing interviews about food safety, and I'm doing all these things. And now I'm like, what do I have to do so I look good on camera?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to learn how to do like just some basic makeup things. So I started watching some YouTube videos. A friend of mine bought me a bunch of like just like this is a natural look, like you're just having the same colored skin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that'd be great. I don't want to be like blotchy or whatever.
Yeah.
So I started watching YouTube videos on how to do this, and I fell down this rabbit hole where I just watch people do insane makeup, like costume makeup or like drag makeup.
Yeah.
And it is like the soothing thing that plays in the background while I'm working on this kind of stuff.
Wow. You would actually be surprised. That's very common for women. Like a lot of girls will just go on TikTok and watch makeup videos. Like I know a lot of friends that do that just for entertainment. Like I'm not super big into doing makeup, but I love watching makeup videos.
But do you learn things from them? Like, do you learn how to do makeup better?
I feel like I've still done my makeup the same since I was young. Like I do the same thing every day. Like I don't get it.
I don't think I've learned anything. So I'm just like watching these videos, and it's almost like not ASMR because it doesn't make me relax. It's just like that cool noise in the background. Like I don't know, that's what I'm listening to.
No, that's so cool. Actually, it's funny that you said that you don't learn anything because they make it look so easy. Like you can literally go from a 2 to a 10 with makeup. Like insane. Like makeup is wild to me, but all the times I've watched it, I'm like, I look the same. Nothing looks any different.
And now I can clock people. I'm like, that's not how that person's face really looks. That's a lie. The other thing I'm consuming is about a month ago, early October. Yeah, around there. I went to a conference that was in New Orleans, and I met a couple people that I know there and a couple vendors that I know there. And one of the vendors took me out to eat at this restaurant in New Orleans, and I wish I could remember the name of it. And I can't stop thinking about how good that food was. A couple days ago, I woke up in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking like, man, I wish I had that duck. It was so good. And it's like 3 a.m. and I was like just thinking about that, and I went to bed and I was like, oh, that really good appetizer. It was so good. I wonder if I could find like that's all.
Did you forget to eat dinner that night?
No, I don't even know what's going on with me. It was, but I literally like sometimes will eat things. I'm like, this kind of tastes like this, but not as good.
Yeah.
This one restaurant will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And I have to spend time researching it to find out where it was. So if I go back, I can eat there again.
That restaurant probably wants to,
I know.
to get the credit.
I should have looked it up before we started.
Life.
Yeah, I need to look. But they were so nice at the restaurant too, which was even better.
Oh, that's great.
What about you? What are you eating?
Goodness, what am I eating? So by the time this goes live, our kitchen will have been done, but I've been telling you about our design. I have been consuming everything that has to do with decor. And last time I talked about doing our kitchen and bathroom, and I just got our stone samples for our floor and for our walls. So I've been putting these combinations together, like different organic textures. We're going for like a very organic vibe. So, like a cement with like a light white organic, and then, mixing the woods together. So I have on the floor before I left, I had all these different stone samples matching with the type of wood we have and like our hardware. So like our sink faucets and everything, like little samples, putting them together to see what looked best. So I'm excited to get back. But right now, that's consuming my entire brain. So
you better be holding an open house. I've heard about this house so much. This castle that you're building, I don't know what's happening right now.
It's beautiful.
But it better be an open house. I'm going to come and tour it. And
I'll send you lots of pictures. Yeah.
No. I will be taking my pictures there. Don't worry. They'll be on the podcast.
You know what? We made a joke that after being in Miami, we'll come to the West Coast and do some podcasting. So maybe we'll host it in Santa Barbara. Maybe we can do it right in my office.
I was going to say, did you?
Yes, I have a great office. It's beautiful.
No. Go back to the designer and say, I need a studio room. And just build a room like this where we can have everything set up for it.
We totally could do that.
I mean, it's still early.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Why not?
Okay. Done.
Perfect.
That's it.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Great. Okay. Well, another one in the books.
Yes.
And then we have another one that we're going to do just a few more weeks.
Yeah.
There'll come out another one. So.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening. If you guys like the podcast, don't forget to subscribe and like, and leave us a review.
Only good ones, though. That's our rule.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a good one. Bye. This has been Okay, But Why? A Microbac Laboratories podcast. Microbac Laboratory operates the largest network of privately held testing facilities in the United States, providing broad analytical offerings and testing insights across the environmental, food, and life science markets.
A company with more than 50 years' experience honing its craft, Microbac is on a mission to improve the world around us, one test at a time.
To learn more about Microbac, testing services, and this podcast, please visit microbac.com.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Your support means the world to us. If you want to stay updated on all of our latest episodes, make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's show, leave us a review. Thank you. Yeah.